We don't want our children to have the same problems we had. And that becomes the litmus test of whether I'm doing a good job as a parent or not.
Totally.
Can you think of something that maybe your parents did or didn't do that you were like, that's just not going to happen here? But then that kind of blinds you to all the other things.
Totally. You know, so I had this like, and I know you can relate to this because we've talked about it before, but I went to this conference once with this generational expert. I wish I could remember her name because she was really phenomenal. But like, basically the whole thing was her talking about going through the generations. Like, what are the hallmarks? What are like the things that this generation like is known for? What did they get right? What did they get wrong? But the biggest takeaway I took from it was, every generation gets some things wrong, and most of the time it's pretty exaggerated what they get wrong. And then what happens is the next generation, the pendulum swings back. And like the good thing is that's hopeful, you know what I mean? Because you think now, for instance, I feel like this is the age like where I could think of my parents being like, your generation's the worst. Like, do you know what you're doing? Like we never had this problem. We never did. And now like at 45, you're like, that I could think of, I feel the same way. You know, you start to think like, man, I feel so down about this and this and this and culture. And, you know, but the nice thing is like what she says, and this is just not on a religious level, this is on just like cultural examination, is that generations tend to swing the pendulum back. So, you know, like the example she gave was like, you know, we had this puritanistic time in the 40s and 50s, which I think a lot of times we tend to
idolize.
Yeah, like, oh, this is the best, dude. We just did everything perfect, and we said everything in Latin, and oatmeal and jean skirts to the floor were
racism.
Normal. It was all good, and and now it's like you know, and now you know, like or the next thing that happened after that was like the sexual revolution. It was like the pendulum swung so far the other way, which if like I went to the Theology of the Body Institute with Christopher West, and like he makes this point that during that time, is messed up as some of that was, and is it opened the gates for some of this time. Like he was also saying during this time, like JP2 was formulating, like not because of the sexual revolution, but in response, I think, to some of the things we are getting wrong. You know, this theology of the body, you know, this understanding that sexuality isn't bad, that the body isn't bad. And so like there's this kind of natural, so for us, for instance, for Generation X, you know, you think of all the music and the TV show or the movies when we were kids. It's like Will Smith parents just don't understand. Ferris Bueller's like the theme was always like our parents don't get us. Yeah, you know,
like heavy metal's an example of that. Right. Like my son, I even tried to play some heavy metal to my son, and he's like, "Why? They just sound like they're angry." I'm like, "Of course they're angry.
Yeah, we were
the world
angry.
is hard.
Yeah, like our parents didn't care about us. You know, and even that was like a response to their generation. But so for us, we always rail now against like, I can't believe that there's these helicopter parents, these snowplow parents, that they just hover over every move, and they go to their kids' sporting practices to watch, and they go to this and that, and they call a teacher whenever their kid felt their feelings were hurt, or everyone gets a trophy. All these like hover, like that's a response to what we grew up as, thinking our parents don't understand us. They don't care. They only care about work, or they just abandon us to the TV, and that we're just latchkey kids. Yeah. Like that was our generation, you know? And so our response, like, again, could be like incorrect, but that swung the other way is just, we're going to take care of every issue our kids have, and we're going to be at everything our kids ever have.
So I wonder what the next generation, how our kids will parent.
Yeah, I know.
Been traumatized
but there's some hope, because on some naturalistic level, there's some self-correction, there's overcorrection. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know. So I don't even remember how we got on this topic. But like to me, there. Oh, I know what you said. Yeah. Like, have you ever had that experience? So for me, I feel like as parents, you know, like, when you start dealing with, you know, internet, pornography, phones, you know, all these different addictions, how are we going to raise our kids? How are we going to avoid that? And in my mind, I kept thinking, dude, if I could raise my kids like it's 1992, if I could, and honestly, this goes beyond pop culture or, you know, technology or whatever. I just thought, even with their spirituality, like if I can give them the exact experience I had, if I can send them to, some kind of Christian camp when they were kids, if I can send them to a Steubenville conference when they're this age, if they could be a part of a youth group.
They'll have an experience and adoration.
Exactly. Yeah. The same thing I had. And the reality is it's just, it's not that, and so even with the cultural part of it, like what was really frustrating to me is I thought if I could raise them like it's 1992, they will avoid all the pitfalls that these other idiot parents are doing by giving their kids a phone in 5th grade or they're 4 years old or whatever, and so especially my first 3 kids, it was really hard. I wouldn't even let them hold a phone, dude, until they were 16, and it didn't really help. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not saying like it's to the same extent. We had open conversations about sin, about the, there's different pitfalls, all this kind of stuff. But like, did it sidestep culture? No.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think and this is what I got from that generational expert was, it's really hard to sidestep a tidal wave.
That's right. You've said that to me before. Culture is a tidal wave.
It's like a tidal wave. And so you're like, oh, well, just step over here. And it's just like, and the prime example of this to me, I thought about it in my own life, is like, there's certain songs, whether it's like a blasphemous, horrible song, or even just a really stupid, corny song that I would never listen to. How do I know all the words of this song? It's just because when I'm in a department store, when I'm in an elevator, when I'm walking, these songs are playing, and you just, they permeate, so it's like culture is very permeable. And I just think it's really hard to just be like, and we're going to sidestep all that, unless you're Amish, or live underground. It's really hard to totally do it. So I feel like at a time that I failed, and I don't know if it's any fault of my own. It's just like, I don't know. I didn't know what to do. And what we did, I feel like on some, I hope there's a time where my kids are like, oh, thanks for doing this, or thanks for making these rules, but now even with my kids that are still home, like they complain about the rules the same way the older kids did. I try and modify some stuff when I realize, I was wrong, but it's really difficult to, fight against a tidal wave.
No, that's excellent. It's right. It's and I don't know if a young parent can hear that, because I wouldn't have been able to hear that,
because you feel like there's no hope. You're like, nothing you do is going to matter. That's not what I'm saying.
It's not just that, but I think that when you're a parent of little children, you really have full control over their lives.
Totally.
And so when you have full control over your children's lives, and someone says, look, obviously rules are good, obviously boundaries are good, I'm not denying any of that, but it's going to get a lot more complex than you think it is. It's hard to hear it until you've had to live through it.
Totally.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, or you're a dingus. What's a dingus exactly?
Used to refer to something one cannot or does not wish to name specifically.
You don't have to subscribe, but if you did, I'd love it. You dingus.
Like the video. That's who we're using that one. Take one.